Two Guys, One Shaker Cup podcast, hosted by Joshua Shaw and Ryan Buckeye.
What's up, everybody? Welcome inside Two Guys, One Shaker Cup, the podcast featuring Josh Shaw, myself, Ryan Buckeye. Boy, I've always dreamed of owning a company, Josh, and here we are. We are both entrepreneurs, living the American dream, providing for our families, or in your case, you provide all the money, all the paychecks to your girlfriend so she can do the shopping and the decorating around the house, and I love it. It's great. But the topic of conversation today is, like, if we're not the CEO of J. Shaw Consulting or Fitness Informant, and we were a CEO of any sports nutrition brand, which brand would we pick? Why? And I love this part. This was your idea. And what would you do in your first day? And I always think about, like, the president of the United States, right? Like, you become the president of the United States, and everybody says, what are they going to do? What is he or she going to do on their first day? Because that first day sets the tone of basically the next X amount of years. In the president's case, 4 to 8 years. And in our case, depending on if we get fired or not, it might be a couple years. So I think this is a good topic. There's a lot of cool sports nutrition brands out there, and this is a very difficult one to do because for me, personally, I think I like that small startup feel. I think it's cool, but at the same time, it's like I've been there. I've already been that small sort of startup thing. I've also been a brand manager on a big $140 million brand, which is essentially, quote unquote, the CEO of that brand. So it's a head scratcher for me. I know that you've had integral parts in projects working hand in hand with C-suite executives, so you understand the type of decisions that they have to make on a day-to-day basis on a bigger scale company versus maybe what you do for your company. So I'm excited about this one. This should be good.
It should be, yeah. This was kind of one of those hypothetical questions to think about, and I think both of us, being that we have a variety of different experience levels, especially in this category, but just CPG in general, I think we can kind of think about this maybe a little bit differently. I know that if I asked this question to some different people, they would probably just start saying some crazy stuff, and I think that your answers might, I think, because you're a lot more fun, I guess.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, I wanted to say I was trying to think of a word that made me not seem as nerdy, but I think most people that have watched or listened to enough of our episodes by now know that when these types of questions come up, I tend to take like a really analytical approach to them, and they're not like super fun. It's not like, what would you want to be when you grow up? It's not like, oh, I want to. I don't want to be an ice cream maker and help out little kids or something. I'm over here like talking about some real complex idea that's like whatever. So we're probably gonna have differing answers again, but that's what makes this podcast fun, because if we both had the same mindsets and brain activity that goes through our mind, it wouldn't be any fun. We would just agree with each other the whole time. It would be, nobody would want to listen to it. They might as well just tune into our personal things.
Yeah, 100%. And what I want is people listening to this podcast, I want you to engage with this one. I want you guys to go, when it's posted to Facebook or on YouTube, comment with who you'd want to be the CEO of and what you would do in your first day. Because I think some of these comments are going to be hilarious. I think some people are going to do some drastic changes. They might take over a brand and clean house. They might, change the way a brand operates, use a brand's equity and maybe change the product quality or whatever it might be. It's very interesting to hear the way people think. So that's what I'm extremely interested in. And if you're currently a CEO of a company, so if, the Aaron Singermans of the world, the Dan Larenkos of the world, the Ike over at ProSteps, whoever. If they are a C-level suite executive at a current firm, who would you, if you couldn't be CEOs of your brand, then who would you want to be a CEO? I would love to hear what Aaron Singerman has to say. If he couldn't be a CEO of Redcon One, which current existing brand would he be a CEO on, and what would he do in his first day? I think that'd be extremely interesting, because I think it's hard for those individuals to remove that CEO cap for themselves and look at the external environment and say, well, then what brand would I do and what would I do? I guarantee Aaron would just pick any brand, just do exactly what he did at Redcon and build that thing into a $100 million company. But for me, this is I don't want to put bias in it, but there's bias in it because I've visited the place several times. I've seen their manufacturing process. I know how good the product quality is. I know the values and the integrity behind the brand. But for me, if Mark Glazer calls me up one day and says, Ryan, I'm stepping down. I want you to take my spot as CEO, that would be cool. And the biggest thing for me, and again, I'm not trying to kiss Mark's ass or kiss NutriBio's ass. It's one of the brands that I have a nostalgia to, because it's a brand that I discovered before I came into Fitness Informant, that I discovered through education and by educating myself, and I believed in what they provided as a brand and what they stood for. If I had to pay for my own products, I would be buying NutriBio quite regularly. And there's other brands too, like Core Nutritionals, and I'd use Ghost, Redcon. I mean, I'd still buy all those products, but like I've been using probably NutriBio consistently for the longest amount of time. And again, it comes down to I am huge, massively huge on doing what's right for the consumer and putting the consumer first. And I feel like that brand has done a really good job of building the brand based on efficacy, ethics, transparency, everything that I stand for as a human being, everything I stand for at Fitness Informant. Like, I pretty much took their values and I said, I love all these. Like, I'm going to apply them to what I'm doing at FI. So for me, like that's the basis of my decision. Like and I was torn because this is an established brand. They've been around since 1996, so that is 23, almost 24 years now. I'm not going to say it's a legacy brand per se because they don't really act and operate like one. They do come out with new stuff. But I also, like we mentioned in the start of the show, like I do like that idea of a startup or a new, like a brand like Inspired Nutraceuticals or something that's new and exciting and people are buzzing about the product quality. But for me, like I was torn, but I went with an established brand, a mid-sized brand, not a massive brand, not a very small brand, but one kind of in the middle. Because that then, there's a couple of reasons why, but it also brings me the challenge on like, how can I scale this business and how can I make it bigger? Because I look at NutriBio today and they're very comfortable with where they're at in terms of dollar revenue, but I think every brand business, they always have this desire to grow. And it's like, I would want to, how could I grow that company internationally, domestically, et cetera? And those are challenges that excite me, that get me going. Like if it was easy, for instance, like if I said Redcon 1, I would be stepping in for Aaron Singerman just to make money because he's so big, and he's going to continue to grow. And there's not a ton of challenge there other than just trying to like manage a staff of 1 billion people and everything. I'm not saying it's not challenging. I just think it's a different challenge that I would be more interested in the challenge that NutriBio would present to me than, say, a Redcon or a Ghost at this point.
No, I think that's a good answer. I mean, I think it's core to you in what you're building with Fitness Informant. I think it just, their brand is similar in a sense. If you were a consumer brand, you would be similar to NutriBio if you offered supplements or something like that. So it's probably a really good opportunity for you to step in as the CEO if this was a hypothetical situation and Mark was stepping down or whatever. This, I think, would be a really good opportunity and a challenge for you. And I think it's, I kind of share similar thoughts towards, what size business would I want to go into? Because I think in my world in consulting, like I do deal with, pre-revenue or small startups. I deal with ones that are kind of getting to that scaled out point. And then in a few cases, I get to the, super complex, big $100 million plus type of brands. And for me, because I tend to side towards like complexity. I like dealing with a lot at one time. I think with being a consultant and having to balance at times, 5 to 10 projects, large scale projects at times, your brain is constantly shifting. So I'm thinking what I would want to go after or be the CEO of is more of a portfolio because of the way that my brain works. So I would pick a company like Glambia, which I was thinking about, picking like Glambia Performance Nutrition, just taking the performance, but I'm taking the whole company. I'm not even just taking the brand side. I'm taking the whole thing because I want the supply chain. I want the innovation hubs, the ingredient houses. I want all that because I'm going to utilize it in unique ways. So I don't want just the brand side of it. I want to take it all. So I know that is multi-billion-dollar
I was
organization.
Say, for reference for those listening, like what is that company worth? And you just did it. So absolutely. I mean, versus the company that I chose, which is probably 20, 25 million. I don't know the number, but it's a fraction of what Josh wants. Josh wants to be king. He wants to own the empire, and that's what you'd be doing with Glambia.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I'd be pretty much the top dog at that point. If we're not considering Herbalife or something like that. Right. But it'd be super complex. I mean, I think I spent a lot of time thinking about Glambia actually, so I think that I wouldn't walk in with a tough decision that I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, I would not going to be naive to say that I could step in and run a multi-billion-dollar organization, especially not being in those four walls all the time. But I'll say that being that I've spent considerable amount of time thinking about their business, I think that I could come in there and do some good, do some interesting things around there. And it's probably going to make me sound arrogant or whatever, but it's one of those things where I think that if I'm going to pick something, I'm going to go after the most complex, difficult one.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and it's funny when you talk about like what would you do in your first day. There's not enough time in your first day, Josh, to do everything you want to do. So like in that case, you're gonna have to figure out really what is number one. And I'll take it back here and dive into NutriBio. And then I also want to add to this episode. We didn't talk prior to this, but because we'll probably have time, and I'll give this to you now so you can kind of think about it as we talk. But like as a consultant / mentor for your transition into the role, like who would you want outside the company? Like it could be somebody else, for a different brand. It could be a CEO for a different brand. It could be it could be anybody. It could be Mark Cuban. I mean, I want you to think of that because I'm thinking of that in my head too, that we can come back to that at the end of the show here. But for me, for NutriBio, the first thing that I would do the first day is I would implement an entire marketing team, and basically like a marketing director, because the one thing that I think about when it comes to NutriBio is they make phenomenal products, great manufacturing process. They are ran with absolute integrity, but they've never been a marketing machine. They never really have been out there marketing their brand in a way like a Redcon One, or even a smaller brand which is well known like Alpha Lion, which is an up and coming, very ever-growing brand that does a phenomenal job in terms of digital marketing. And it's just never been in the wheelhouse of NutriBio because I don't think they've ever had like the staff in place to do it particularly, and it's never been like their expertise is manufacturing and making great quality supplements. They have a great sales staff. They have a great leader, Mark Laser. But like I said, in terms of marketing, I look at that as a huge opportunity. So for me, it'd be like, let's create a marketing strategy for this brand. What do we know who we are? We know what we stand for, but how do we tell that story to consumers in a way that's much louder than what we've done in the last several years? That's not to say we have to go to the Olympia. They've done that. They've gone to the Arnold. They've done that. But what other ways digitally can we tell this story? What other ways can we create video content to tell this story? Now, one thing about that brand that people need to realize is because their formulas cost more and they don't necessarily charge an extremely premium price, is they don't have a lot of margin room for a marketing budget. So there might have to be sacrifices to make that work. But I'm a marketing guy. I'm a brand guy. It's what I do. It's what I love. So I always think on like, if you can market a product properly and create the buzz behind it, everything else will kind of go with it. And for me, it's like, okay, they have good distribution, but it could be better. They could get more international distribution. How do you do that? Well, you can hire more sales staff to go out, educate retailers. But if you can create that customer demand, that consumer demand, much like Aaron did at Redcon, like the consumers are walking into the GNCs and the vitamin shops asking for that product, and because it didn't exist, now that store has to carry it. That indirectly is going to increase your distribution. So if you create you have a great product, a phenomenal product that people believe in. I believe in it. If you have great sales staff and great people, and then you also have a marketing message that's tailored to reach the masses in a way that's not cheesy, corny, but also is effective to get people to say, yes, I want to try this, and they walk into their local brick and mortar, they go on to certain websites, and they realize it's not there, then it causes them to either go to a different website that has it, or reaches out to their current favorite website to say, why aren't you carrying NutriBio? Like that would be, for me, that would be my goal, to create a marketing team that would create such consumer demand that it ultimately increases distribution both internationally and domestically. And I think that is the one challenge that I look at that brand, again, with all due respect, because I love it. And I think that Mark would agree. I think that Dan and the staff over there would agree. Like marketing's never been number one for them. It's been product quality and transparency. And that should be. That should still be number one for the brand. That would never change. I would never change any of that on the brand. That would stay because that's what I love about it. I would just amplify the marketing efforts and more of like 2019, 2020 type of, marketing initiatives and strategies that's more relevant to today. Because, no offense to them at all, they still do a product catalog. Like you get a product from NutriBio.com, they send you a physical product catalog, which is kind of cool to see that brands still do it. But they're probably one of the only ones that do it, So it's like in my head, I'm thinking of all these different ideas and things that I would want to implement. And I would, obviously, as a CEO, you're not the marketing director, but that would be the one area that I'd want to make sure that I strengthen. They have good people there in marketing currently. I would not let any of them go, just to be clear. I would just amp it up and beef up that department and kind of hit the ground running with our messaging so that way more people can discover. Because there are still a lot of people that don't know who NutriBio is. And they should, because it's such a great brand. It's such a good brand. Then you have great brands like Ghost, who are a great brand, but they tell that message phenomenal through their video content. There are people who anticipate the new season of Ghost, building the brand. They're a supplement company, but people are waiting for the debut of a new YouTube series. Like, they are doing things outside the box and differently. Like, those are types of initiatives that I'd want to bring into the NutriBio side. It's like, I want people to anticipate and be excited for everything that we do. So that would be the biggest challenge, and obviously you're not going to implement a marketing team in one day, right? But you set that stake in the sand and say, this is what we're going to build. We're going to build this without losing sight of what's important to this company.
Yeah, as you said, on my side with Glambia, I mean, obviously, a first day would be tough to do everything that I want to do just because of how big the company is. But I know I started off by saying that I wanted the whole company, but I think kind of first deal that I would kind of work on is looking at the portfolio of the performance nutrition brands, specifically trying to figure out, like, how do we reposition all of the portfolio brands to make sure that they're not cannibalizing each other in terms of positioning of the market, the channel strategies, the product strategies, all those types of things. Because I think right now, unfortunately, with all the acquisitions and things, they have some crossovers and things that are kind of cannibalizing the other brands in certain ways and channels and things of that nature. So I would really take a critical look at just the portfolio as a whole and break each individual section down to make sure that everyone is positioned towards a particular fragment or particular focus. So then they can not interact with each other as much. Make sure that each brand has its own legs to stand on, and they're very apparent to the market. So in the same sense of view, I mean, I'm taking, probably a broader sense of marketing or branding, but I think it's also important, even with the very biggest organizations, that they sometimes don't do a really good job at telling that individual story and making sure that the consumers that are going to buy into a certain brand, be that like a Think Thin or Think Now, like is it a women's product line? Is it both? Is it what is it? It's unique in a sense, like they haven't really gotten to that point where they've really stuck a stake in the thing and said, hey, this is a women's line, aspirational driven line that's going to be more food and beverage driven over just nutritional supplements. Or you have BSN and you have Optimum, that a lot of times their product crosses over, their channels cross over, the customers they're trying to reach, like all this kind of works. Unfortunately, it just hurts the overall portfolio because you're not really defining each individual brand in a very strong sense to create a moat around each one. And that's starting to hurt them on that side of the business over the last couple of quarters, because there is some issues in terms of where do you put these products in sales channels? What kind of product development do you come out with? All of that kind of stuff. And I think you need to reset that and decide, hey, is there brands in our portfolio maybe we need to get rid of because there is so much crossover we can't redefine it in a way that makes sense? Do we divest that? And then also by setting that map up and understanding like where these all fit, then you also understand where are our holes at that we can go out and buy something, because I am Glambia and I have a lot of money, so I'm going to go acquire people. I'm not going to just sit back and not do that. So I think it's not having that set up correctly. You don't really know where it makes sense to buy or sell some of the assets you have in your business. So that's kind of like, for me, a little bit of the first step. Now, to take this back towards just Glambia, not Glambia Performance Nutrition, I have the benefit of having, one, the supply chain, two, ingredient innovation businesses, subsidiaries. So what I don't see Glambia doing all that much is like holding exclusives on some of this innovation that they're creating. They put it out to the market for everybody to kind of buy, and that might be like short-term beneficial from a revenue perspective, because you get to put it out there in everybody's hands. They get to use it in their protein bars or their protein drinks, and everything's great. But I'm about creating exclusive experiences, and if I own all this technology, I'm going to give myself a head start. So I'm going to give myself a couple-year head start on all this stuff and make sure that I'm the only one having all these new things in my products. And then finally, when I've gotten all the value extraction out of it, then I'll go and give it to other people, and then they can, help build it up a little bit. But at that point, everybody's going to attribute that technology to my brands. Yeah. So I'm not going to initially give all of that secret sauce away to everybody. And even if I have special pricing or special things like that, I'm going to not necessarily give all of that away all the time, because I'm also selling to my competitors. So I can kind of tighten it a little bit to give myself an advantage in the market, especially in the sense of like maybe an economical, and it's not currently positioned as an economical one, but I would position more optimum and an economical but high quality product, because I own manufacturing, I own supply chain, I own everything, where my cost is going to be lower than everybody's and at a higher quality.
Yeah.
And because I'm going to be putting everybody else's prices up a little bit higher, you're not going to be able to compete with me. So I'm going to win the economical game, which is at this point maybe 50% of the market is people looking for the cheapest, best quality thing out there. So I'm going to basically own this whole part of the market, and all my other brands are going to be going after these very premium innovation side things that I own as well. So pretty much I'm like leveling a lot of people, and it's going to hurt the market players, but it's probably going to elevate a lot of these other like service companies, be it innovation houses, ingredient houses, even brands and things like that. They're going to have to elevate their game to match me, or they're going to be left in the dust because I'm going to crush them.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought up a couple of things, because I've always thought about too, just in terms of Optum and BSN, they're twins. I mean, at this point, your BSN protein, your Optum Gold Standard Whey, they're exactly the same. I mean, even the consumers are pretty much interchangeable between the two. I mean, and then to your point, Josh, like, what do? Do you kill one? How do you redefine what brand is? And like, I like to use Gasperi as an example, because Gasperi Nutrition once upon a time was like this hardcore sports nutrition brand that everybody, if you say Gasperi, you're thinking like anabolics, you're thinking pro hormones, and then they went through everything they went through, and they came back now this year in 2019, and they're not what they used to be. They redefined who they are as a brand, and now they're more of like a general health brand for everybody. So it's definitely doable, especially with a legacy brand. Muscle, the Gasperi did it. So you could do that with a BSN. You could redefine who they are, what they are. You could like kind of take it away and then bring it back if you want to, or to your point, you can kill it. And I do like the fact that you have this portfolio of things with Columbia if you take over the job. Like, I've worked on their ingredient innovation side before with them, and they have some really cool stuff that they create over there in their R&D team. To your point, they offer to everybody. Why not maybe create another line of like maybe a premium line where the margins aren't as high, but where you're using some of these cool new advanced ingredients to build market buzz for them, have an exclusive with your own brands, with like Fitnox, for instance, is one that I worked with. Like, if you think that this is the best nitric oxide producing ingredient out there outside of S7 and nitrates and stuff, make some consumer demand for it by creating a subline under your Columbia umbrella, and then sell it after like a 6-month exclusive to brands, because now brands might be willing to pay more of a premium for it. I guess there's a lot of options you could do. Like, I think that in your head, you're probably thinking of a million things you'd want to do. Obviously, that might be day, 75 or 100 down the line, but like it's just there's so many possibilities on what you could do. And for us here, like in terms of like this would be massive feats for us. Josh is way more than mine. That's not to describe taking over a NutriBio. It would be a huge feat. And like I asked you earlier, I said, like, think of somebody that you'd want to kind of come on and be like sort of your consultant, the person that's going to sort of help groom you into this role, and who would you want that to be? And it can't be the former CEO. It can't be, but it could be somebody within the space. So for me, obviously I couldn't have Mark Glazer, because if he's not a possibility, he would be gone. But I like I don't know. I like I do like what Aaron Singerman did with Redcon One, and I think what his mindset in terms of data collection and utilizing data and leveraging the shit out of data in the digital world was absolutely brilliant. So like for me, it'd be like, Aaron, come help me for in this transition process for 3 to 6 months and teach me what you know. Now, Aaron would never do that because then I'm a competing brand. But like if I could have anybody, I think I would have Aaron, because I think he's proven it time and time again that he can build brands. And he did it with Blackstone. He left Blackstone. Everybody sees what happens to Blackstone now. It's not nearly as relevant as it once was. He did it a little bit on Prime. And obviously Redcon is $100 million. It'll be a $100 million company this year. I confirmed that with him, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that in 3.5 years or whatever it was. So like that for me would be like, Aaron, come on this, and like, where do we see opportunity? I see opportunity externally right now because I'm not involved in the brand. Like if I was an employee of NutriBio, there'd probably be other things that would be obviously exposed to us, and same with you. If you're in Colombia, you probably have a million other things to think about. But this is from the outside looking in. So I would ask him to be my mentor, and specifically just because like I've seen what he did with Redcon in such a short period of time. Now, obviously, like I would lean on him in terms of the digital marketing and the marketing side of things, because that again was my area of focus coming in as a CEO. But that would be the person I would pick, and that would be the subject I'd want him to really help sort of bring his guidance and what he did and what works, and how can we adapt that or adopt that to a product quality first company like NutraBio.
I think that was a good choice overall, because I mean, you're trying to fill the gaps with anybody that's a mentor or advisor or whatever. Like, you're trying to fill what is not inside the four walls currently. So, going in, you're going to have yourself, which is, brand marketing and all these things that you have skills on. But the skill set within the four walls of NutraBio is going to be very much towards maybe operational, product development, that side of it. So you need to fill the gaps the best you can. So one of the things that you would do is try to add that. So having somebody like a marketer like Aaron helps you, fulfill that need. And I kind of went in the same direction. For me, I think within Glambia, one of the biggest missing parts is having that very big thinking marketer. And I didn't necessarily pick anybody in our industry. I could have if I wanted to, but when you first initially asked the question, you were talking about Shark Tank people like Mark Cuban, but I went towards somebody else that has made some appearances on Shark Tank, but it's not, I don't think, a normal person on there. Is Rohan Oza, is like the guy that started Vitamin Water and a bunch of other very large food and beverage brands. He owns a very large private equity house, Kavu Ventures, that does a ton of stuff building massive CPG brands, both from a startup, and he's had access to building billion-dollar ones. So at Glambia, I want to build billion-dollar brands. You know what I mean? So for me to have somebody that has the thought process to build out those things, it would be a great kind of resource to be able to do that. Because though I might have big ideas and have some things that I have in my head, I need somebody that can think and have done it before to that level, and he's done it. So I think that would be kind of where I would necessarily look at and go. I could have probably picked a bunch of other kind of really good high-level marketer people, but that was just because you brought up Shark Tank, it came to mind.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant for sure. I would just be curious how many times you'd have to change your shirt on day one at Glambia in that role, because you'd be so nervous, and in these boardrooms and being like, Jesus, it's a multi-billion-dollar brand that I run. What I would be interested in, like for us, because we run our own respective businesses too, is like for people out there, obviously we asked you to comment on social and what brand you'd like to run and why, and what would be the one thing you change to begin with. It'd be interesting to see what people would say about our brands. Like if you were the CEO of my brand, because we're embedded in this, right? We don't see things the way other people see. Like what would you change day one, or what would you implement day one for J. Shaw Consulting? What would you implement day one for FI? I always think that's interesting, because now, if Mark is listening or Glambia folks are listening, they're thinking of like, well, these two guys who are, I'll say we're fairly smart. I'll give us a little bit of credit. When they're listening, I say, okay, that's what they see. So I'm curious to think of like, we just not critiqued, but we said like what we think we would change based on the external environment in which we're exposed to. So I'd be interested to hear like what those people think, like what Mark and NutraBio thinks, or what Glambia people think about our feedback. But then I'd love to hear what people say about our brands and be like, you know what, Josh, you're really missing the boat here. You need to do this, or this is what I would do. Or Ryan, you have such a money making opportunity with this right here, and you're just fucking it up, And like we don't see it, because when you're in this role every single day, you have blinders on, and it's hard to critique yourself. It's hard to criticize yourself. I try to do it on the reg. I try to sit back and say, where am I weak? Like your SWOT analysis. Like I do a SWOT analysis internally probably every 3 months just to figure out like where am I lacking, because I have this burning desire to be the number one fucking brand in this space. Like that's what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. But you can't do it unless you discover your weaknesses. And I would assume that Glambia does this all the time. I'm assuming what you said about the brands like Gold Standard Way or Optum and BSN being very similar. I'm sure they know that, and I'm sure that they're trying to figure it out. But it's one of those things that's easier said than done at times. So like for us to come on here and say this is what we would do in day one, we understand it would take longer than one day. We understand that there's limitations behind that too. It may not be possible to do the things that we want to do based on certain red tape, because in your case, Josh, it's such a big corporation, you have a ton of red tape. Just because you're the CEO doesn't necessarily mean you can do whatever the hell you want. You still have like a board to speak to and answer to. So It's interesting. It's a cool topic. So if anybody out there listening is from those companies that we mentioned, would love to hear your feedback. Don't rip us up too bad, but this is what we see from the external environment. But and if you have feedback, like I said, we want to hear your statements and your comments. What brand? What would you do in day one? Why? Because I think it'd be super cool to see what people have to say about this as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's I would welcome, and I honestly wish more people would tell me things that I'm missing the boat on, because I get fanatical about certain things, and sometimes I will put my head down and work on something for a couple hundred hours, and then I peek my head up and I'm like, wait a minute, I just probably missed on a bunch of different things. So I think if people had some thoughts around my business, I'm not all that.
You just opened Pandora's box, Josh.
I know.
I can name several people who have given you feedback on your social media posts over the last year alone. So, I mean, bring on the comments. Let's go.
Kent Nagle's ready. He's gonna be the first one. I'm gonna get a 5-page email. Yeah.
Love it. Make sure you guys check us out on Facebook. 2 Guys, 1 Shaker Cup. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Again, the engagement is huge. Engage with us. Let us know what you think.